While the Abraham Accords made significant, even historic changes in the region, there are forces opposing these agreements, led by the Islamic Republic of Iran. During the meetings the delegation had with leaders in the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel, it was clear the main threat to the future of the Abraham Accords is Iran. In fact, one official told the delegation his country's three main threats were Iran, Iran, and Iran. During the trip, Joel Rosenberg gave a copy of his book, Enemies and Allies, to many of these Middle East leaders, many who were intimately involved in the establishment of the Abraham Accords. Rosenberg addressed the Iranian threat in his book, and when the book was published, we discussed the threat of Iran in this interview.
So the good news is some of the major non-state terror organizations and actors are not the magnitude of the threat that they once were. The bad news is that in all of the chaos of the Middle East of the last 20 years, Iran, no matter what the United States and Israel has done, Iran is more dangerous today than ever before, and they are dangerously close to building not just one nuclear warhead, but an entire arsenal. They have also built out their ballistic missile force, not only to be able to reach here in Israel, but to be able to reach Europe, and they're getting closer to being able to reach the United States with intercontinental ballistic missiles. And Iran's alliances, I really spent a lot of time in the book, their alliances are more dangerous than ever. They've built this really close strategic alliance with Russia, with Turkey, with North Korea, and increasingly with China. Now, each of those alliances look a little different, but they are dramatically stronger. Iran's regime is dramatically stronger today because they have these anti-American, anti-Western, and very hostile enemies as their allies. And several of those countries, of course, are nuclear armed themselves, which makes the Iranian nuclear threat even more dangerous.
Plus, they built up proxies throughout the region. Iranian militias in Iraq, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis down in Yemen as well.
That's right.
Almost surrounding Israel, as well as some of the Sunni Arab nations.
And I think that the countries that have allied themselves with Iran's regime, I don't think they understand who they're in bed with. I think all of those leaders in all of those countries believe they are using Iran to poke in the eye of the United States and to mess with Israel and the Western alliances. I don't think that these leaders and nations believe that Iran is setting the agenda, that Iran is setting the pace, that Iran has genocidal ambitions. The Iranian leadership doesn't want to just improve their position in the region. Iran's leadership are driven by an end times radical, apocalyptic eschatology that believes that at the right moment, the Ayatollahs will be able to annihilate Israel, which they call the little Satan, and that's only their first objective. Ultimately, they want to annihilate, destroy the United States, which they call the great Satan. And I don't think Putin or the Chinese leadership or Recep Erdogan and the great leader in Pyongyang, North Korea, I think they are seeing Iran as part of an anti-Western, anti-American alliance. Let's just get everybody who hates America and hates the West, let's get them all in one big semi-unhappy family. I don't think they realize exactly who they're in bed with when it comes to the Iranian regime.